Permit me to make welcome Dr. Ahmed Attah Jacob. You have the floor, please.
All right, thank you very much. Greetings to everyone, wherever you are in Nigeria, in the world. I'd like to, of course, start by appreciating and commending POHAN, led by Comrade MD Sane, for putting this series of lectures together to commemorate the Public Service Day of the United Nations. I must say that the POHAN team and the entire executive done good work in the selection of guest speakers and of course the topics that have been presented. It's been quite insightful, quite educative, and I hope that my presentation will also add value to the entire program. So that said, my name is Dr. Ahmed Attah. I have been introduced, and I'll be speaking on the topic, Virile Civil Society, Panacea to Good Governance. Of course, this is in addition to what has been spoken by very great scholars. I quite enjoyed the presentation by Pastor Sam Adeyemi. Somebody I've never met, but I've listened and learned a lot from a lot of his topics and discussions on leadership. So I want to go through my discussion using the following headlines. We'll try and introduce the topic. We'll look at some basic definitions. We'll also look at as civil societies. We'll still look at good governance and see if we have various civil societies in our own environment. And of course, how can civil societies contribute to good governance? We'll look at some of the observations, look at some of the challenges, make recommendations, and also conclude. So by way of introduction, it's important to note that freedom of association is a fundamental human right. And of course, civil societies have played a historic and fundamental role in the defense of civil rights, of democracy, defense of justice and equity world over. And of course, African Nigeria is not an exception to the positive role of civil societies in the support of good governance. Civil society generally is a community of citizens linked by common interests and collective activity. Also known as the third sector, it is a sector distinct from the government and business, but made up of family and the private sphere. And also known as the non-governmental organizations. And of course, good governance have been introduced and discussed here, but again, suffice to say that it is responsible conduct of public affairs and the management of public resources. So being virile is to be strong and to be full of energy, and panacea is a solution or remedy to anything. So essentially, a virile civil service being a strong and energetic solution to good governance is what I'll be talking about. So we'll look at civil societies, right from the Black Power movement in America, the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa, the National Democratic Coalition in Nigeria, and of course, labor union movements, professional associations, non-governmental organizations, notably professional associations like the Nigerian Medical Association, Nigerian Bar Association, ANAN and the Nigerian Society for Engineers. And of course, NGOs like Doctors Without Borders, Action Aid, Save the Children International, Amnesty International, and Greenpeace. And of course, we have a series of faith-based organizations that abound. We also have online groups, social media communities, and of course, even our own POHAN falls within civil societies. So good governance, like I said, it means process and institutions meant to produce results that meet the needs of the society while making the best use of resources at their disposal. It's also a measure of how public institutions conduct public affairs and manage public resources in a preferred way. There's some characteristics of good governance. We just list them. It will include participation. It will include rule of law. It will include transparency, responsibility, consensus, orientation, equity, effectiveness and efficiency, accountability, and of course, strategic vision. All these are characteristics of good governance. And again, principles of good governance, some of them listed here: fair conduct of elections, representation and participation, responsiveness to the people, to the needs of the people, efficiency and effectiveness of policy and implementation of policies, openness and transparency, effective communication, rule of law, ethical conduct, competence and capacity, innovation and openness to change, sustainability and long-term orientation, sound financial management, human rights, cultural diversity, and social cohesion, and very importantly, accountability. So these are some of the principles of good governance. Now, a question that I'd like to ask here: are there virile civil societies? Yeah, that is true. There are virile civil societies. We can take some examples like those that were involved in the discontinuation of military rule, like NADECO, along several others. Those that fought racial segregation in the United States, like the Black Power movement, and recently Black Lives Matter movement. And then those advocating for gender equality and also advocating for an end to violence and discrimination and abuse against women and children, like the International Federation of Women Lawyers, FIDA. And of course, when there are common interest, collaboration increases virility of civil societies. So, and how can civil societies contribute to good governance? In a lot of ways. From my own background as a medical practitioner, and also having spent past more than 20 years in medical politics, I've seen severally that when you have an organized civil society, an organized association, there's a lot that can be done to improve good governance. One example, for instance, is the role that the Nigerian Medical Association played in creating awareness, in drawing attention of government to the need to improve the laws guarding the health of the nation. And that led to the passing of the National Health Act into law by the National Assembly in 2014, and also the assent by the then President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, passing that National Health Act into law. And of course, advocacy is also a major aspect that civil societies can use to carry out their own contribution to good governance. Advocacy on what is the standard, advocacy on rule of law, advocacy on importance of electoral reforms, creating the right reforms in the electoral system, ensuring that merit is also used in taking decisions by government. All these are areas that civil societies can contribute to good governance. And of course, participation, very, very critical. Civil societies participating in the process of our election, in our democracy, in creating, drawing attention to the need for social improvement in infrastructure and social service, and also improving the quality of governance at the grassroots areas where civil societies can contribute to good governance. So yes, monitoring and supervision is also a very critical aspect of what the role of civil societies should be towards contributing to good governance. Same thing, electoral reforms, entrenching democracy is very, very critical to having good governance, the performance of good governance in our society. And of course, the emergence of credible leaders, very, very critical. And civil societies have a major role to play in, encouraging credible leaders to emerge, in encouraging participation. We see a lot of people who have the quality, who have the vision, who have the capacity to lead, but they are held back because they feel they cannot participate in the process, the democratic process that we have. But again, by the effort and the awareness by civil societies among our people, among the population, among the eligible population, these are ways that people can get encouraged to participate in a democratic process, and this can lead to the emergence of credible leaders. And of course, we've seen a lot of civil societies like SERAP being involved in anti-corruption campaigns. This is critical because we all know that corruption is a major impediment to the presentation of good governance in Nigeria and across the world in Africa. So anti-corruption movements are also very critical to the provision of good governance. It's also very important to transparency. It's very important to equity and rule of law. And of course, another very huge area that we can see the effect of civil societies in our community or in our society has to do with raking up the level of patriotism in our society. In Nigeria, we can all see that the level of patriotism is very, very low. Currently, the involvement of civil society in this area is negligible because you see that most civil societies are engaged in very narrow areas of interest, issues that concern them either as a group of people or as associations or as a tribe or a religious group. So that is an area that is so huge where we need to bring people together under the umbrella of the nation, to step up, to defend the nation, to defend our democracy, to defend our justice system, and also our rule of law. And of course, another area where civil societies can contribute in the area of community development. And I can give firsthand experience and example in this area. As the national president of the Emoriko Development Association, I've seen development that can happen when people agree on anything. People can agree to be involved in the development of rural roads. People can agree to be involved in the development of primary health institutions or primary health centers in their communities. People can agree to be involved in the provision of power supply, solar power supply to rural communities, and civil societies working together can bring about a lot in community development. And of course, there's some observations that we need to bring forward. The abundance of civil societies. Looking at the list of what constitutes civil societies, almost everywhere you go in every sphere of life, in every part of the country, any part of the world. Civil societies abound. You can create them very quickly with the advent of the social media. Just by sitting in your office or in your room, anywhere in the world, you can create a group that can put together people ranging from as low as 10 to as high as 1,000 on the Telegram or on a lot of other social media device. That really changes the sphere as far as civil societies and what civil societies can do to contribute to good governance. It can be built around any interest. Essentially, any individual can think of an area of interest and create a group and create a society and create a community of people with that interest. And I give another example. Recently, as the chairman of the NMA Committee on Blood Transfusion and Haematological Services, we organized the World Blood Donor Day on the 14th of June. It's a global event, and we were able to organize a nationwide event, do a nationwide health walk, create a nationwide awareness for voluntary blood donation across the country, and of course also organize a webinar where people of diverse interests contributed towards improving blood transfusion service in Nigeria. So these are things that are possible, and these are things that can contribute towards good governance. And they can essentially transform into a political movement. Civil societies can come together, support a political movement. They can come together and create a political movement. And these are things that are possible, and these are things that can, produce good governance if the right vision and the right people are put into perspective. So what challenges are there to what civil societies can do towards creating or supporting good governance? Of course, we know that in our own environment, the poverty level and ignorance is very high. So that means that putting people together and getting them to work together in a civil society towards contributing to good governance is challenging, knowing that most civil societies run like non-profit organizations. People get to volunteer, and where there's a challenge of poverty and ignorance, a lot of people might not be able to sustain that kind of volunteer process over a long period of time. And of course, dwindling economic fortunes is also a challenge to what civil societies can do towards supporting or advocating for good governance. A lot of people are focused on basic needs, and that can be a challenge in terms of getting a functional system in the civil societies that can contribute to good governance. Yes, of course, our infrastructure is also a huge point. Infrastructure is a huge challenge. Health, access to health is poor. Education, access to education is poor. Power supply, water supply, these are impediments to how civil societies can organize and how virile they can be towards supporting good governance in our society. Our growth rate is also very high. Our population is huge. There's poor planning. Currently, Nigeria is the sixth most populous nation with a population of over 214 million people. And based on projection by the United Nations, our population is supposed to triple, more than triple by 2021,000 to over 700 million people. That creates a huge problem if we go at the rate that we're going and at also the steps we're taking in terms of planning. So this is a challenge because that further puts a strain on the economy. It puts a strain on, creates a huge milieu for poverty and of course, ignorance without proper planning. Then the issue of corruption is there. Most times it's conflict of interest. Most times we do not practice what we preach, and we see civil societies being enmeshed in a crisis situation emanate from issues of corruption, and that can also affect how they contribute to the call or the advocacy for good governance in the country. Of course, low-level patriotism is a challenge. People are more interested in sentiments of religion, region, and ethnicity. We do not have huge common goals of raising the patriotic level of people in the country, and that is a huge challenge as far as what civil societies can do to promote good governance. Then the mindset of our people is also shallow. We have issues. People are more focused on self instead of sacrifice. People are more focused on what they can get from the system more than what they can offer to the system. And that really is a challenge when you put into perspective the role of same people in civil societies and what they can do to push for good governance. Of course, the issue of conflict of interest also comes to play, as earlier highlighted, because we see some civil societies that have conflicting interests with others, and they're not able to find common grounds. And because of that, that overall affects what can be the collective role of the coalition of civil societies towards promoting good governance in our society. In terms of what should be my recommendations, there's a need for civil societies to do more in terms of increased advocacy, increased awareness campaigns. There's a need for civil societies to do more in terms of advocacy for improved access to quality education and health. There's a need for civil societies themselves to get involved in more training and retraining on leadership principles, leadership qualities. Civil societies need to lead by example. It's not just about having a great vision on paper, but we should be able to practice what we preach. Of course, merit as a practice, we should advocate for and also practice merit as a way of governance within a civil society, and use that as a template to also call on the government and the public sector to also practice merit as a way of governance. Of course, working on our patriotic values, there's no end to that. Currently, like I said, it's so low. There's a need for a whole look at what we can do as a people to improve our level of patriotism and drive from self to service, from self to nation, from region to nation, from religion to nation, from tribe and ethnicity to nation. So these are areas that I feel if we can work on our civil societies, that will be a huge panacea to good governance in our society. And of course, most of the speakers have already spoken about having strategic vision. It's important that civil societies, work on a template of strategic vision internally, and also advocate for our public sector and government at all levels to also, have very clear vision and also have the steps needed in, achieving that vision in the future. So, ladies and gentlemen, I want to really appreciate the leadership of POHAN. This has been a well thought out program marking the 2021 Public Service Day of the United Nations. The topics, like I said, is so important, so apt, and I'll conclude by saying that civil societies continue to play a critical role in the provision of good governance. They should serve as external checks to the system, and they also should play a vital role to the growth and development of any nation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Attah.